And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with the Game Boy Geek.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be auctioning and bidding with gems to gather these characters that will be building a pyramid of power with. This is Viceroy. It's for 1 to 4 players. It was brought over by Mayday Games. It was originally on Europe from Hobby World. And it takes about 45 to 60 minutes to play, engine building type of thing. Let's take a look. At the beginning of Viceroy, you get to pick your player shield, which has some really cool artwork on it. You get to be that character. It doesn't give you any special abilities or anything like that, but they sure are beautiful to look at. Over the course of the game in Viceroy, you're going to be building a pyramid of characters that are going to give you all sorts of special abilities, different strategies, and you're going to be building points from these pyramids. And at the end of the game, there's going to be 7 different ways that you score and keep tally. Let's show you how the game works. Now here's what the table might look like setting up. Now it does not come with this playmat. It's not necessary, but it is kind of cool, an extra cool thing to have. It's about 15 bucks on Mayday Games website. There's 4 different colored gems, and there's a bunch of them, and there'll be a certain amount of these put out depending on how many players are in the game. And there's all sorts of scoring tokens. Also, Mayday Games has a pack for about $13 of these cool gems that you can use instead of the punched out ones that come in the game. Now everyone's going to start the game by keeping one person character card in their hand. They'll place 1 to start their pyramid. They'll get actually 2 of each gem color, but then 2 of them are randomly given back to the game. So everyone has a different distribution at the beginning. You'll also get 3 of what these called law cards, which basically give you special abilities during the game, and they don't cost you anything to play. We'll get to more of those later, but that's pretty much how you get set up. The game is split up over basically 12 turns, and each turn has 2 phases, an auction phase and a development phase. In the auction phase, people are going to be bidding with different colored gems, red, blue, green, or yellow, for the character or characters that they might be trying to go for on each one. You can only get 1 character per auction, but at the start of the game there's only some down here. So let's say I wanted to go for this gem right here, the swordman. I would bet. So once everybody's ready, they would hold a gem, and you only take 1 gem of that color of red. And everybody reveals. Now, if I'm the only one to place a red, cool, I get this guy, and that's the end of my auction. However, if me and if me and another player, and there's no other card here, more than 1 player, did red, then none of us win, and both of these get spent. And it's like, oh, we both just lost. And then anybody, let's say these 2 guys got bought, and the 2 of us went for red, and now we go again. So now we got a decision to make. Do we pass? Do we bid again? If we bid again, one of us is going to go for red, or one of us is going to go for yellow, or else we'll end up losing gems again. And you can talk and say what each other are supposed to do, but you can lie. And so if you pass, you can take any 3 gems that you want from the pool. But you don't get anything this round. So sometimes you can just pass and get 3 gems. Now, if we did that again and we both said, nope, I'm being stubborn, okay, you go yellow, I'll go red, and we get screwed up and we both do it again, you get 3 tries of that. After 3 tries, if you haven't gotten a card, you essentially have passed and you get to take those 3 gems. So that's the auction phase. Everyone gets 1 card. Now for the next round, these guys are going to move up here, and then at the beginning, when the next auction round starts, these 4 are going to come down here. So now if somebody bids next auction round on yellow or red, they will have 2 choices as to which one goes. And in that case, if 2 people put in red, they can decide which one gets which. If they can't make an agreement, they lose the gems and don't get anything again. But if they make an agreement, they can pay the gem and take one of those. But that's the next auction round. You just do auction once, then you go to development phase. Now I already started building my pyramid from this guy. He was the first guy in the game. At the beginning, you get that 1 guy to put in your pyramid. Now, I can start building this. I can build him here, or I can build him here. In this case, it doesn't much matter. Now, whatever level I build him on, this is my first level, that's what I have to pay him. If I was building somebody on top of these guys, this would be a level 2. And if that's the case, you would have to pay the first level and the second level requirements, 1 and 2. If you build him on the 3rd, you'd have to build him on red, green, green. If he was on the 4th, blue, red, green, green. Now you only get the reward for whatever level you're on. So level 1, I put him here. I'm going to get a 2-point bonus that will just go right on him. That's like that, just points it in the game. And I can take any 2 gems from the pile. Now, when you do play the development phase, essentially you're playing it face down, everyone's ready, you flip it up, and you put them where you go. You get to do this 3 times, up to 3 times. Many times you'll just be doing it once, sometimes you won't have any gems to spend. But you have up to 3 different plays that you're going to do one at a time, in synchronous with everybody else. Now, let's say later in the game, let's say I had this as my starting hand, and later in the game, I put this here. Now, because it's all blue, I immediately get a blue gem to put in behind my shield, and at the end of the game, because this guy, the top half is on the second level, this guy's gonna be worth 2 points at the end of the game. The higher the level that it's completed, the more points they are. After everyone's played, that's the end of the first round, we go back to auctions, and again, it works the same way. At the end of this, if these guys aren't taken, they get discarded, and the ones that didn't get taken, let's say these guys got taken, would move up just like that, and we would refill this just as you saw it. So now you know how the basics of the game work. There's these 3 law cards that you get at the beginning of the game. You can get more during the game, but they essentially, when you play them as to one of your 3 development plays during the development round, you don't have to pay for them, you can play them anywhere. So for example, this one says, at the end of the game, you gain 2 points for each adjacent character card. So let's say I had put this here, there could be 6 character cards around that you could be gaining 2 points for each. That could be a 12-point card. This one says, anytime you take a law card, you can put it underneath this card. At the end of the game, you get 5 points for each of those. This one's at the end of the game, gain 1 point for each of your single colored circles and infinite gemstones. We're going to talk about infinite gemstones here in just a moment. So let's look at these cards. Let's look at this. So we got 2 points and 2 with this guy, but let's say he was put on the second level. He would get a scroll placed on him, and this is for endgame scoring. Because some cards, like this one, if you put this guy in the 4th level, he would give you a scroll 5. So if he was on the top level, he would have gotten that. And then, basically, this means is for every scroll you have on any character, it's going to be worth 5 points. So if you had 5 characters with the scroll and you had this, it would be 25 points. But you might be able to get more of these from on other characters later, and each of them might be 8 points. So that's how it's like kind of a multiplication, kind of like the science and Seven Wonders. So that's how the scrolls work. We have just straight points sometimes. We have these law cards, so those would allow you to get more of those cards that we just showed you that do some special things. We have these science cards. These are called gears, and that's, you would put this, if he was on the 3rd level when you activate him and paid green, red, red, you would get a science token. This allows you, when you pass, you usually get to take any 3 gems from the pot during the auction. You get 1 extra gem for every science that you have, so you can build gems in that way. Now this guy, we take a look at him. This is that infinite gem we were talking about. What this means is that if I'm going to play somebody down, like if I was going to play this guy on the 3rd level of my pyramid, you only have to pay a blue, green, and yellow. In this case, as long as I have a guy that has a blue infinite there, I would never have to pay any blue when I play a character and pay the cost. However, I do have to always use blue when I pay in the auction, just not when you play the character in the development phase. So that's what these infinite gems do. Now, this guy, if you put him on the 1st level, you get a defense token. If you put him on the 2nd level, you would get 3 gems of any kind and an attack. What the attack does is, for every attack that you have behind your shield at the end of the game, 4 points is going to get taken away from every one of your opponents. Unless each opponent has a shield, so every one shield cancels out any sword that an opponent might have. So it's basically defense for somebody taking 4 points away from you at the end of the game. Now the game will end after about the 12th round, once all the characters are pretty much gone. There's some law cards that will allow the game to last longer. But then you go down to scoring. So essentially, each of these things gets scored individually. So for example, we have any full circles of the same color. Now before this happens, if you have any gems left over, you can paint them. So for example, I have green, green, yellow. If I had a green gem, I could paint it green, and now this one is full. And again, because this is on the 2nd level, each of these would be worth 2 points. And sometimes you may have things like this, which would be, hey, if I have a full blue, it's plus 4 points. So this one would be plus 2, plus 4, that one alone would be 6. Then we go to the infinite gems. If you had any infinite gem icons on there, let's say we had this guy here. Now here he had an infinite blue gem. Let's say he was on the 3rd level. He's an infinite blue. You would automatically get, if he was on the 3rd level, 3 points for that. But if you had the blue one here, it would be 3 plus 2, so he'd be 5 points just for that thing right there. We then go for scoring points of the law cards. We saw how some of them can score for adjacent points, some things for underneath. You'd score all those up. Then we'd score just the points that are around different people, because some people give you, as I showed you, just points depending on which level they're put on. Then we go for the scrolls and magic, which we talked about earlier, between that and the multipliers. That each one of those is worth whatever level that's at. And then if you have a scroll, a shield, and a science, each set of those is worth 12 points. And then we do the attack again. Each player that has an attack behind their shield, it reduces all of their opponents each by 4, unless the opponent has a shield, which then cancels that out. That's pretty much the end game scoring. Whoever has the most at the end is the winner. All right, there is Viceroy. Now, this typically is not a game that I would search out to play or review. The theme is kind of okay. The artwork is really cool, but there really is no theme. It's very abstract. You're putting things, you're getting pyramids, you're getting resources, you're spending resources to do things to get points. Very Euro-y. It's not something that I typically like. And I got to tell you, the first time I played the game, I did not like it. I felt like the game was not long enough for me to get done the things that I wanted to do. I had these gems, I was going for the magic scrolls. Once I started going down that path, I felt like I had to stay on that path the whole time just because of the nature of that specific strategy. I felt like I was running out of gems too often. I felt constricted. I felt like I had to pass too often. I felt like I couldn't get enough done. It was not enjoyable. But then on multiple plays after that, I had the same feeling that many people do, I think, the first time they play Suburbia, another popular game out there, where you're balancing money and population. And as the game goes on, you got to get money really early, because that will allow you then to spend money to build that population, and eventually they'll intersect and they'll go the opposite ways, but without money you can't do anything. This game felt the same way to me, and now I understand why people do not like Suburbia sometimes, because you feel handcuffed, you feel like you can't do enough. This game, you'll feel the same way if you don't go after gems in the beginning. So like in the early game, you really need to be going after those gems or those science tokens that give you extra gems when you pass, or the infinite gems where you don't have to spend one you play a character during the development phase. You got to get those early, because if you don't, you're going to be swimming and trying to get gems and running out of gems and having to pass in the auctions. It's not going to be an enjoyable game. At least it wasn't for me. So if you do play the early game of trying to get these gems and build your pyramid, and then kind of start narrowing down on a strategy or two to kind of go with, it can be a very enjoyable game. Granted, there's really no theme here. It could have been anything. I typically like games with themes, but sometimes abstract games like Splendor, I guess, I didn't think I would like that either, and I did. And this kind of felt like that, because you've got that engine building, there's gems, you're trying to think of a couple different things at once. A little bit it felt like that, but to me it felt more like Suburbia. And you're not building buildings, but that I got to get the gems out first, build that engine first, and then start figuring out how to do it and let those things intersect. So, I don't know, it was interesting. I like how there's different strategies. Do you go just for straight points? Do you go for, the scrolls and the magic? Do you go for putting many of those circles together and getting those extra points? Do you go after attack and just boom, start attacking everybody? I like how there's multiple paths to victory. The bidding aspect, I really like that. Actually, Hobby World, the people who originally published this, used that bidding mechanic in a game called Hollywood that they came out a few years ago. It was a drafting game about movie stars and such. And they used this same auction mechanism where you bid blindly, and then if you tie with somebody else, boom, you lose it, and then you got to do it again. It's that head game. Are we going to go through this again or not? Come on, man. But in this game, it actually says that you should be talking about things. And when there's 4 players, hey, I'm going to be going for blue. Okay, which one do you want? You can kind of talk beforehand. You don't have to keep what you're saying. But I like that auction mechanism that they've used in the past. It can be brutal if you don't talk things out and you're stubborn and you just keep going after the same thing. You could lose 2 or 3 times in a row and then have to pass and get those gems back. So it's interesting. I like it. I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. I like the avenues of victory. If you kind of set up that engine, it can be a very enjoyable game. Otherwise, it can be very frustrating. But that is Viceroy.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.